Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, Spiritual Quest. And we're in Chapter 6 of the Impersonal Life, which was a favorite book of Elvis's. And we're going to be getting into that chapter. We're going to walk through at least the beginning of it today. And we're going to do that right after we come back from this song, which is about Elvis's walk through these texts. It's called Word on Fire. Hi, Gunn. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear echoes from a man named Mike Moon. Now, Mike Moon, he collected a massive amount of Elvis memorabilia, and he started in 1971 when he had a chance to meet Elvis in Las Vegas. When he met Elvis, Elvis gifted him a belt that Elvis owned, and that evening started a passion in Mike to gather as many objects of Elvis as he possibly could. Hi, Tarzan. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so Mike Moon eventually collected so much stuff that he opened a museum. Now, Mike passed away at I believe in 2016. And so this sign, it represents a museum that has a lot of Mike's collection. Now, this museum is now gone as well. I don't know if this was the sign that was up when Mike was alive, but it represents Mike's collection of Elvis stuff. I believe this one was in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And of course, Mike, I'm just now delving into Mike's history and learning about Mike because he has so much of this stuff and his name is connected to it. And I'm thinking we should know something about this man because we're going to look at an item that he had. Yeah, I think it's Pigeon Forge, Tennessee was this one. Is that always where Mike's museum was? I'm not sure. It's kind of like Jimmy Velvet. He had multiple museums and some of them moved around, and I'm just not quite sure with Mike yet. If you know more about Mike and you're watching this video, let us know in the comments or the chat, because we're going to learn more and more about Mike as we go forward looking at Elvis artifacts. But today we're going to look at this one. Elvis owned this 1950s silver tone Regina Passes necklace, which was gifted to him by a fan. So he did not purchase this particular item. Someone gave it to him, someone who loved his music, possibly his movies, but probably the music first. And they gave it to him by throwing it on stage during a concert in the 1970s. So that's interesting too, I think, that this piece was made sometime in the 1950s. But it was gifted to Elvis by throwing it on stage sometime in the 1970s, nearly 20 years later. It feels to me like this piece was owned by the fan for that period of time, or that someone in their family owned it. I mean, they could have gone to a thrift shop and bought it, I guess, but it feels like it had some personal connection to the fan. And this necklace features a round medallion, which we can see, and the Virgin Mary is on the front, along with the script, and I'm probably saying this wrong, but Regina Passes or Pacus? It's Latin, so maybe it's Pacus. And it's a Latin phrase that means Queen of Peace. And it's a title that's often used in Catholicism to refer to the Virgin Mary, and it refers to a specific image or statue of her as the Queen of Peace. So I believe this depiction that we see here, this is what one of those statues or images would be, that this is her depiction as the Queen of Peace. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And that these images of the Queen of Peace, they frequently show a scepter or her holding the infant Jesus who holds an olive branch. So here we can see not an infant Jesus, but more like a toddler Jesus. And he is holding olive branches, which are symbols of peace. And the word pacus or passus, that means peace. However you really... I even took Latin in high school, but so that's why I think it's pronounced pacus, but it would be a soft C in English. Hi, Terry. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And so this is a symbol of, I think, not just peace, but spiritual peace. And so the fan attempted to gift to Elvis spiritual peace. And on the reverse side, although how do you really know what's the front and the reverse on this particular medallion? I'm not sure. I guess it depends on the way you wear it. But on this side, we can see Noah's Ark. And the words, and again, these are, I believe, Latin, and I'm not really sure how to pronounce them. Foederis Arca, meaning Ark of the Covenant. Which is interesting because that refers not just to Noah's Ark, but the Ark that they carried the Ten Commandments in, the Ark of the Covenant, that even if you're not Christian or Jewish, would be known to you through pop culture from Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what they were after in that movie with Indiana Jones. So this says Ark of the Covenant. It has a picture of Noah's Ark. It's got the rainbow, which is the symbol of the covenant that God had with Noah not to flood the earth again. You can also see the dove, which is the bird that signaled to Noah that land, dry land, was again available. And of course, we all know that Noah saved every living creature on the planet by saving 2 of every species and then repopulating the earth after the flood that took out the whole world. And Jen says that it's pronounced Pacus, like a snake, with the S. That's interesting. With an S like a snake. It's interesting that a snake sound would be integral to a word that means peace. Jen says that she Googled it. Should have paid more attention in Latin class, right? But they didn't really teach us how to speak Latin because they said it was a dead language, so we don't have to read it. That's one of the reasons I took it, so I didn't have to learn to speak it. And this particular, this medallion, it was thrown on the stage by the fan. And it's not clear to me whether it actually made it into Elvis's hands or not. But what Mike Moon says about meeting Elvis and when he received the belt from Elvis that started this journey for him, that includes this medallion, Mike said, "Little did we know that the generosity of Elvis giving his personal items to friends would help keep his legend alive." And Jen says that I have pronounced the S wrong, that she's trying to describe it in words, and I'll have to look it up later. That's funny. I'll look it up. We'll figure it out. Or I think you're saying that the C is pronounced like an S. Pass this. like a snake. Passus. Maybe that's it. It's still interesting that there's a snake sound right in the middle of the word peace now. It just gets more interesting as I try to figure this out. And Dylan says pacifist. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but it's odd that that sound would be in a Latin word because they tended to only have one sound for each consonant, if I'm remembering my Latin correctly, which I may not be. But back to this and what Mike Moon is saying. He said, little did we know that the generosity of Elvis giving his personal items to friends would help keep his legend alive. But as we can see with this piece, that may or may not have even touched Elvis's hands, that it's keeping alive the mission that Elvis was engaged in during the last half of his career, which was to spread the word. Now, we've seen in previous episodes the way that Elvis has spread the word through books that he's given, through other gifts, through the songs that he sings, through the gospel quartets that open up his concerts, through the all-night gospel singing that he does in his own suite. We've seen that he spreads the word. And here, a fan has shared the word with Elvis, and whether Elvis touched the piece or not, the piece itself has gone on to spread the word. Mike Moon says that in 1980, J.D. Sumner gave me a trunk with an assortment of items thrown on stage by fans during Elvis Presley's concerts. Over the years, J.D. kept the items that he picked up on stage after the concert's final curtain. So after the concerts, J.D. would collect all of the fan offerings. And I think he would show them to Elvis, although I'm not sure it happened every time because they did a lot of shows. And Elvis may have just let him know he wasn't interested in keeping any of the items. We don't know. But JD ended up with all these items, and he kept them in a trunk. They were special to him. He knew that these were tokens of the fans' love, and that they meant something special, and so he kept a hold of them. This piece in and of itself isn't really valuable. The only value that it truly has, other than the message that it spreads, is its possible connection to Elvis himself. The connection that comes through J.D. Sumner. Now, this piece was on display in Mike Moon's Elvis Presley Museum for over 30 years. So for 30 years, people from the public, Elvis fans, came and they saw this piece, which gave them a message of an eternal promise that God had made with man, that's symbolized in the rainbow, and also of the peace that Jesus can bring to your heart, which I believe is what the Queen of Peace is trying to tell us. And J.D. Sumner, well, he says it best when he says that Elvis has left the building, but he's still around. He's left the building, but he's still around because these pieces keep moving forward and sharing the word. Now, this particular piece that was up for auction this year, you could have owned it. It had a minimum bid increment of $200, which meant that you would have had to bid at least $200 to own the piece. And basically that $200, that's the Elvis story that's behind it. That's the value of the piece. but nobody bought it. Nobody bid on it. So nobody won this piece at auction. You could still go out there and in the next auction, if it ever comes up again, and maybe they'll have a lower bid increment, might be able to get a hold of this piece that a fan meant for Elvis and ended up with J.D. Sumner. And with that, let's move into the Impersonal Life, Chapter 6, Thinking and Creating, Conscious Creation Through the I Am Within. And the I Am, of course, is the God who lives in your heart, the voice you hear from inside, the one that is not your mortal shell. It's not your brain. It's not the pieces of you that are always looking for food and shelter and the necessary needs for physical survival here. This is about your soul, or that part of you which is internal, and that you can use it to consciously create things. You can harness this power to create what you want to create, especially when there is unity, alignment, and that's unity with the divine, alignment with God's will, and then manifestation means that these things you dream, these things you want to create can become possible. They become real. And this chapter is going to tell us that man does not think. It is I within who think. So it's the I am who's generating the creative capacity within you. The divine I am inspires and directs every idea. And we hear that a lot when creative people talk. And they say, people ask them, where do your ideas come from? And they try to tell you about what may or may not spark their ideas. But a lot of times people will say they don't know. They just wake up in the middle of the night, they've got an idea. Some of them keep a pad of paper by their bedside and they write it down. Others say they carry around a little voice recorder, or you can do that with your phone now. And every time an idea pops up, they talk it into their voice recorder and then they've captured it for later. Because they realize that these ideas are sparks that quickly catch fire and disappear if you don't feed them fuel or save them so that you can use them later. But nobody knows where they really come from. Come from your mind, apparently. And the book's telling us that's divine inspiration. That probably would have resonated a lot with Elvis because he had a lot of ideas. And when he sang and he interpreted the lyrics, because obviously when he sang, his songs weren't like anybody else's, even though they were the same songs in some cases. He found inspiration inside and he channeled it through his voice. And he's probably always wondered how he could do that. Where did that talent come from? And this is telling him that talent's linked directly to God. And then that justifies the fact that he's used the talent, and the fact that he's done so well with it indicates that he is moving in the path that the divine will wishes him to move, that he's been aligned. Although I believe that alignment, it's not something that happens and then you stay aligned. It's something that you have to do from moment to moment. You have to constantly struggle to remain aligned. Just like when you're driving your car, and if you drive it enough, eventually you got to have the front end realigned. Because the bounces and the potholes and the reality of the road will eventually have some wear and tear on the vehicle itself. And that's what the book is telling us you use meditation and the communication with the divine for, is to realign. And so Elvis might be thinking that his life overall is aligned, which it seems to be because things tend to seem to get better and better for him, and he's having greater and greater success. And in the later half of his life, he's spreading the word more and more. But at the same time, he has all of his regular personal struggles that we all have, and that we've seen in the other episodes of this series and my other series. And that knocks him out of alignment over and over, maybe from 1 minute to the next within one day. But while he's aligned, that's when these inspirations come, which would somewhat indicate when he's in the recording studio, and we've all heard how he had to sing those gospel songs before he recorded anything else. Because if people thought that was to warm up his voice or to make everything comfortable in the studio, but what if he needed those moments? He can't meditate alone inside the recording studio. There's a bunch of people around, and it's not enough for him to be aligned. He needs everyone in the studio to be aligned so that all of them can be giving their best performance for whatever they're going to record. And so through the singing of the gospel songs, for at least the moments of the recording in the studio, he's brought everyone into alignment. Even those who aren't Christian or say that they don't believe, or as we've seen from the book of John, maybe they just deny belief. And everyone believes. But for those moments, he's able to bring everyone together. And perhaps that is why his songs are successful. That they're part of divine inspiration. And we're going to learn about true versus unconscious thinking. And it's telling us that unconscious thinking is we're unaware of the divine source within. We're driven by reactive mortal desires and fears. It reinforces the illusion of separation. These desires and fears which make us an individual, and the divine source which is masked to us, and we begin to think these ideas, these inspirations are due to ourselves, as if we ourselves might be divine outside of the divine shard, which we might be denying. And it creates error thinking and disharmony. In other words, you can rationalize your actions into believing not only that you are righteous, but that you are doing what you're doing for God, when in fact you're doing it for yourself. I think this would have spoken to Elvis because I think he thought about this a lot. Am I doing all of these things for just me? What am I doing with my money? Am I enjoying it only myself? But we saw that he liked to share things. And in true thinking, conscious of the I am directing thought. And so I think this is where Elvis wants to get to. He knows that his blessings come from God, and he's seeing within this book that it's telling him the I am is inspiring these thoughts that he has, and that the more that he's conscious of it, the more that he's aligned, the more of these thoughts he will get, and they will be in line with the will of God, which is the next piece, aligned with the divine will and purpose. and recognizing the unity in all creation. That was a big point for Elvis, I think, specifically in the fact that he did not want to think about his friends or those people who he knew to be good that did not meet the definitions of his church for salvation. He didn't want to think about them not being saved, of them being whatever damnation means in eternity, whatever he thought it was. He didn't want that to happen to them. And so this message that everyone is part of the divine, and as we saw in John, if you reflect it through the impersonal life, it may be telling us that we don't have to worry about the eternal life part. Everyone's going to get it. It's the unity part that we need to be concerned about. Will you rejoin with the divine, or will you always be a separate shard? Which in the end will be a hell. And it manifests harmony and perfection because your thinking is now true, because you recognize that it's from the I am, and you're channeling the I am, and you're walking in the path the I am wants you to. And then it's going to talk about the I am within you. And we've got this nice little graphic to go with this that shows you from the very center, which is the divine I am. And then you're made in the image and likeness of God. And you possess all of the divine faculties and powers because you are a shard of the divine. And this says, I made you in my image and likeness, and I have my being within you. This is again a representation of the idea that we are a piece of the divine, a shard of the overall whole. And you possess all divine faculties and powers, though you may be unconscious of their source. I know that this spoke to Elvis because he would sometimes, and I believe he was playing jokes when he did this, but he would point at the clouds and he would say he was going to move them with the power of his mind, and he'd look at the people around him and then he'd make some gestures and the clouds would move. Now, did Elvis make those clouds move, or were they just moving? It depends on who tells you the story. Which, to me, it shows the performance capabilities that Elvis had. You know, a lot of having people believe is your ability to perform and sell the material. And I think he was joking during those periods. But I don't really know. They do say that in the 60s, and between 64 and 67, specifically, he was very into these kind of ideas, which is this period where he and Larry were really diving into the books. And Gunn says that this is tough thinking. It's certainly an idea that's not, these are not ideas that are made explicit to people in their religious texts. And Benner seems to feel like he's tuned into a universal language to describe his religion of Christianity. And Elvis seems to be agreeing with Benner. And Gunn is asking, is this like Star Wars and the Force? It is like the Force if you were to imagine the Force as a sentient creator of the universe, right? In George Lucas's idea, the Force, it binds everything together and it does create a unity, but it does not have a will of its own. That's why you can use it for either the light side or the dark side. In this sense, you are a sense, well, in the impersonal life sense, you are a shard of the divine. So it's not just that you have the power of the Force flowing through you. You actually are a piece of God. And all living things are a piece of God. And even all non-living things are a piece of God. And that's what makes us into this unity. But God himself has an intellect and a will, and we're all serving it in some way. The Force doesn't have that. That would be, I think, the major difference. And it also means you can't use your gifts for a purpose that is not for God, even when you use it to sin. And that's a very difficult idea to wrap your head around. And Gunn says that Elvis talked about the mental force. Yes. Elvis did believe, especially once he was reading these books, that he could harness this divine power. And I don't know whether he truly believed that or whether he was experimenting with that, or like when he wore the necklaces, whether he was making a joke in order to try to pass on a lesson. The people who reported it saw it as a joke, so maybe he didn't communicate the lesson. And Jen says that she could talk to Elvis about this for days. And I think that's something that Elvis was looking for, that he could not find anyone who could talk about this for days, except for Larry. And that's why Larry became very important to him. He tended to tire everyone else out when he got onto the subject. And I think part of the problem with that is, like, he would talk to his Aunt Nash about it, but she was very, she would not have been in approval of the impersonal life. I'm sure she would have approved breaking through in communication to somebody in order to bring them the word of Christ. But she would have been extremely leery about using a book like The Impersonal Life to do that. And so she and Elvis did have discussions about this book, I'm sure, because he had lengthy religious discussions with her. But she would have returned to the Bible over and over. And the point of talking about these discussions with Aunt Nash or with other members of his family who were fundamentally Christian, Assembly of God, they would not have liked these ideas. And they would have been typical of other people who were deeply involved in their religion, whether it be the Assembly of God or any other religion. They would have found these ideas intrusive and possibly anti-Christian or anti their religion, and it would have created a hostility just to hear it. When you talk to people about religion and politics, it's very difficult to have open conversations about it. The conversations that we're having right here are very unusual. And I think that we're able to have them because Elvis is involved in the conversation. We're not debating religion itself. We're trying to determine how Elvis saw it and how he would have seen these other texts and how he would have applied those to his life, which allows us a rare opportunity to discuss together religion from almost an external viewpoint, which disassociates people from their deeply held emotional beliefs. And that creates the opportunity for true communication. So it's not just Elvis's artifacts which continue to spread the word. It's possible that we're spreading the word right now to people who would not normally ever listen to this, but because Elvis is involved in it, and there's a desire to know, why did Elvis believe these things? Not that it's true or that it's real or that anyone else should, but why did Elvis do it? And Gunn says that she's not sure if we did talk to Elvis about this for days, if we'd understand it all. I don't think Elvis understood it all. That's what the talks are for. And Gunn says that he gave her a book and she took it to his Aunt Nash. To his Aunt Lillian, I know that he did. Or she might have refused to take it. I'll have to look at the story again real quick. I don't know whether he actually gave one to Aunt Nash or not. I have to assume he did because he bought hundreds of copies. And I think that Aunt Nash would have accepted it from him. Of course, I don't know. Wild speculation now. We're moving into wild speculation. She may have also refused it. I don't know what their actual discussions about it were. I just know that from a fundamentalist Christian viewpoint, The Impersonal Life is probably not an acceptable book because it teaches that you don't have to go to the Bible to get your answers. Most Christian faiths are very scripture-oriented. And they would believe that books outside of the Bible have a great potentiality to lead you into wrong thinking about the Bible. I'm not sure I would agree with that because I find the Bible itself to be, no matter how we read it, unless you go back to the original language, you're reading a translated version. And as we've seen, that adds complexity and it adds ideas that are inherent in the language itself, that are connected to the words that are used into the text, which wasn't there. Or it possibly makes it clearer. I don't know which. But if you go back to the original text and you look at different ways that it could be translated, well, even in the original language, even if you understood it perfectly, these things aren't clear. So, I don't know that I would agree. I find something very attractive in Benner's sayings that you can find the Word of God in all things. And that we don't need to be concerned with people being actually shown a Bible. That God will still make clear to them his word. I find that very comforting, but the fact that I find it comforting might mean it's not true, so I don't know. That's one of the reasons I find it interesting to walk through these books. And Jen says that you don't have to be able to take it all at once, that it can be deep and it's okay. And that's a message that the Impersonal Life itself gives us, and not one that I think the Bible makes clear. I don't remember anywhere in the Bible where it says, you don't really have to understand everything right now, just keep reading, or just read it all. Or if it does, I don't remember it being very often. But in the book of the Impersonal Life, just in the few chapters that we read, the 5, it's already told us over and over and over, you're not going to understand any of this. Just make it to the end of the book, and then maybe we'll need to reread it. That's what it keeps telling you over and over. And Gunn is saying, wouldn't Donna have had her book? Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know whether she. The thing about what Larry says about having bought hundreds of copies, and I've said it over and over and over in these programs because it's a quote from Larry that he bought hundreds of copies. Where did they all go? I mean, I've only been able to track down maybe 6 or 7, but there's supposedly hundreds that are out there. So she may still have it. Or it may have gone to one of the other kids. She had more than one child. Or it may be with a grandchild. Or it may have been sold off before that. People, whoever had it, didn't know it belonged to Elvis. Or he may have never given her one. I just don't know. But I do wonder, where did all of these copies go? But it also makes me feel like there's copies out there that we could stumble on, like in the wild, like you could be at a thrift store if you were in America, or maybe anywhere. Who knows where these have gotten to in the world? And you'll see the Impersonal Life, and it'll have writings on the side. Wherever you see that, go ahead and buy it, because maybe that's Elvis's. And Gunn says that she doesn't like to not understand when she reads through things. I feel you with that. I don't like to not understand either. I think, though, that sometimes we try to force an understanding. And I've found this myself looking at Elvis history. I try to force myself into an understanding. And when I do that, I become much more personally connected to the opinion that I've formed. And then I have a harder time of letting go of that opinion when it's shown to me that it's wrong. And what I try to have to remember all the time as we move through this history is that it's possible everything I've said is wrong. And we will find new evidence that shows it completely differently. And I have to be ready and open and able to accept that. And so that's one of the things I struggle with as we move through these texts in the history of Elvis Presley. But we're also going to learn in this chapter that thoughts shape your reality. And I think that's something that probably resonates with all of us, that here in 2025, and I think probably for the last 50 years, this is a teaching that I think is universal, and we all know that your thoughts shape your reality. That your perception is creation. Your world is exactly what you believe it to be. If you believe a thing is real, it becomes real to you. That's not just a teaching from the Bible. I think we've seen that all ourselves in our lives. Change your attitude to change your environment or body. First, change your attitude towards them. You are the master. I think a lot of people get stuck on this one, where they believe that their environment is in control, or the pain of their body is in control. And these things can truly seem to be in control, and in some cases they are. Let's say if you're a prisoner of war and you're locked away, you don't have any choice about your environment, and it probably is greatly affecting your attitude. But what this is saying is that even in the worst of environments, or in the worst of pain, if you change your attitude, things will become better. And Jid says that sometimes the understanding will come in different forms, and when our mind and body are quiet, and then they show up. I also have that experience. Most common for me is I'll fall asleep, and then when I wake up, I'll have a better understanding about something. Things will be clear. I think it also has to do with if you're ever depressed, especially if it has to do with darkness and night. When you sleep and you wake up in the sunlight, then the next day looks better. And that's a very common saying, that things are going to look better in the morning. And it's common because it's an experience that we all share. It's a universal experience, like what this book is talking about. And the next thing here is withdraw power. Stop thinking power into discordant conditions. Withdraw your attention, and they will dissolve into nothingness. This is a very interesting one because it's saying that the problems that in your life, they're as massive as they are because you have given them the power to be massive. But that if you pull your power away from them, they will shrivel, and then you will be able to overcome whatever these issues are. And I think this one's wrapped up in a saying that, at least in English we have, that is, you're making mountains out of molehills. And that's what that saying means, that you're making something gigantic a big deal out of something that is a very small deal. And you return to the source, turn within to the I am. This allows divine thoughts to replace false thoughts, recreating your world in harmony. So this is telling us that some of these perceptions that we have, these first three things that it's told us, perception and creation, you have a perception that's creating a bad reality for you. You got to change your attitude. Your attitude is terrible because of the reality that you feel is being imposed upon you. And you've created a feedback loop through the attitude and your perception. And that's feeding power into this negative environment around you. And so this feedback loop is actually making everything worse. And perhaps you recognize it. Perhaps you do have the ability to step back and say, my perception is doing this. I've got this horrible attitude. I'm feeding the power into the bad, negative things around me. I'm giving my enemies power, but I cannot stop myself. I cannot see the way out of this. Every time I look at the situation, I have the same perception. And what it's saying is, in those moments, well, really all the time, but especially in those moments, you return to the I am. However you do that, whether it's through meditation or gospel singing or whatever it is you do. And by communicating and communing with the I am will burn away the wrong perceptions. These are creations of your secular mind, and they cannot stand in the light of the I am. So they will disappear. Your vision will be restored, and you will be able to then push power into those pieces of your environment that are going to create the harmony. And you'll be walking in God's path on the will, through his will, and doing what he wants. So this is like a little roadmap on how to make this happen. You got these three things, and you're saying, I don't know how to do any of these things. And it tells you at the very end, you do it by talking to God. And God will make it clear how to make each one of these happen for you. I think that might have spoken to Elvis as well, because I think especially when he would have a fit of anger, he would later regret it greatly. And so if he yelled or screamed at somebody, now what he wasn't any good at was ever apologizing for it. He would give gifts, but he had great difficulty, according to those around him, and from the recorded history of when these things would happen, he didn't make verbal apologies. He just wasn't any good at that. the shortcoming. But he did reflect heavily when he had these moments, and he felt terrible about them. And I think that this little roadmap that we just looked at would have given him a way that he could deal with his anger and his temper, which is also a reason that I think he avoided personal confrontations, because he knew he had this temper and he knew it could get out of control very easily, and he did not want to say things that he would regret or to take actions that would emotionally harm others. And when we come back in the next episode, we're going to be looking at the creative process. We'll probably read through the portions of the text that we've gotten through in these slides so far to catch up to here. And then we'll move forward with how this creative process works. This would have been really interesting to Elvis because, of course, he's a creator. This is what he does. So for today, that's going to be the end of what we're going to get through. And I'm going to leave us on a song. And it's going to be Truth That Sounds Like Lies, because a lot of this, like Gunn says, is very hard to understand. And you wonder, is this the truth or is it lies? But this particular song's about Charlie Hodge and how he was a good friend and how he tried to say things that he thought were true. But now in 2025, some people think that maybe his truth sounds like lies. And until I see you all again, y'all keep on taking care of business.
No whisper in the family halls, no doctor's word, no shadowed calls. We searched the papers after he was gone. No cancer written, no sickness drawn. Yet silence breaks in fractured skies. Truth that sounds like lies. Charlie spoke with kindness deep, repeating words he thought to keep, protecting Elvis, guarding flame, or echoing voices without a name. A loyal friend, a gentle guide, truth that sounds like lies. Three voices sing in broken time, each one honest, each one blind. The story bends, the rumor flies, truth that sounds like lies. Fracture born of love's disguise, truth that sounds like lies. At Graceland's door, the doctor came. Vernon ill, his body lame. A secret spoken, hushed and great. Bone cancer spread beyond the grave. I carry words with tearful eyes, truth that sounds like lies. Cells that look like death's disguise, stained and studied, no disease inside. Not cancers marked, but nature in. A body breaking, nothing to mend. Science clears, but rumor cries, truth that sounds like lies. Each heart believed what it was told, each hand held fragments, shards of gold. But when the pieces fail to bind, the world calls false what's true inside. Three voices sing in broken time, each one honest, each one blind. The story bends, the rumor flies, truth that sounds like lies, fracture born of love's disguise, truth that sounds like lies. In the silence of the king's last song, truth and rumor both belong, a sacred ache beneath the skies, truth that sounds like lies.